You're listening to Big World Network.
Phineas Frakture and the Curse of Steampunk, Episode 11. Written by Joseph Gatch. Read by Michael Young. Shadows began stretching across the city as both electric and gas lamps flickered on to combat the oncoming darkness. The setting sun cast its orange hue through the clock tower, while Phineas and William intently watched the streets below. In the distance, the Imperial Zeppelin still hovered over the decimated brownstone, and at regular intervals soldiers could be seen rappelling to the ground below. They then moved outwards in their search for the missing mummy. Fortunately for the trio, the soldiers had checked the clockwork stores, found them secure, and moved on. Unfortunately, other soldiers were still swarming the streets around the factory. "William," said Phineas, "go down and find the telephone and get a hold of Abigail. Explain our situation and tell her to pick us up as soon as possible." "On my way," William replied, quickly bounding down the stairs. Moments later, he shouted, "She's on her way. We're to meet her in the courtyard." Phineas looked at Steamotep. "Can you walk?" "Of course," he replied. "I am spry for my age." Phineas cracked a wry smile. "At least you have kept your sense of humor over the years. Let's go." On the ground floor, they met William, who was watching out of one of the windows facing the factory's courtyard. "Why must we go this way?" asked Steamotep. "There are some very bad people looking for you, who don't want to end your curse, but to use your technology for their own purposes." Steamotep touched his heart. "I used this once for the wrong purpose. I cannot let that happen again." The beating of the rotor made them look through the window. Quickly descending, a small copter came to rest in the courtyard. The trio hurried outside and boarded the craft. "That was fast," Phineas told Abigail as he took the seat beside her. "Just be glad that I was at the airfield when William called." She gave a quick gasp as Steamotep climbed aboard and looked around at the aircraft, with Sweepio still attached to his hand. "Who is that?" "Abigail, meet my cousin, Vernon, from Jersey." "Why do I even bother? William, get Vernon strapped in." William shot her a confused look, but did as he was told. The steam rotor craft's boiler chugged as the ship lifted off. Phineas watched the soldiers start to scramble back to their airship as they realized their quarry was escaping. He figured they would have at least an hour before the giant airship caught up with them. That was more than enough time to do what he had planned. "This contraption has the hansoms beat when it comes to traffic," William said when they touched down in Phineas's backyard. "I could almost see these things catching on as regular transport." Steamotep was still in awe of the modern marvel. "I think that seeing wonders such as these has made my curse worth all its sorrow." Yes, great advances. Time's wasting, though. Come along, everyone." Phineas hurried out of the copter while Abigail shut it down. Steam escaped from the valves as the boiler cooled, shrouding the machine in its own fog. Phineas burst through the back door and shouted, "Mrs. Popkiss! Coffee, if you please. Doubly strong. And where is my mercurial ionizer? The one that set fire to the sofa last week?" The housekeeper appeared, holding a pot. "It's in the umbrella stand. And it always is. Wipe your feet, all of you. I just got this house in order, thank you. Oh, my," she said as the mummy entered behind them. Without missing a beat, she berated him without a second thought. "You, sir, mind your bits. I'll have no body parts falling off and dirtying my clean rags. Lord have mercy on an old woman." She continued her tirade unheard, disappearing into the kitchen. "William, take him into the lab while I fetch some things. Mrs. Popkiss, we might be having guests shortly." "I'll put on the tea," she shouted back. William showed Steamotep into the freshly cleaned lab and offered him a seat. There was an awkward silence as Steamotep stared at his host. "So, how's Cleopatra these days?" asked William, only to receive a blank stare. "All right, I guess she was a bit after your time." "You are cursed," Steamotep said suddenly. "No, I'm not," William answered just as quickly. "Yes, you are. After being enclosed in a tomb for 3,000 years, one's mind becomes adept at seeing things not immediately apparent. You hold the burden of one who is cursed."
"I guess you would know, of all people," resigned William. "It is getting worse, and no one can help me."
"Turn to your friend. He will help you as he is helping me."
"With all due respect, he is going to blow you up. Not the sort of help I'm seeking. I also think that you have a little more faith in him than I do."
"Faith is all you need. Do not lose it." At that moment, Phineas entered carrying tools and a cup of coffee. He sat down at his work table and began putting together a small coil with several leads, and fashioned a tiny set of gears as well. Abigail followed him in a short time later. Throwing her jacket on a shelf, she eyed the living mummy. "Is anyone going to tell me just what is going on?"
"Phineas is going to end the mummy's curse before state security can get a hold of him," said William.
"Did he kill Kavanaugh?"
"Not at all. You see, it was a cult that was after the mummy as well. They ended up being smeared into the sides of a building during a mystical storm that brought Steamotep back to life," William replied.
"I see. You boys just can't have a simple weekend, can you? Should I even ask why he has a head on the back of his hand?" "My interpreter," answered Steamhotep Sweepio. "Of course." She turned to Phineas. "How do you plan on ending the mummy's curse?" "With that," Phineas replied, pointing to a small canister bolted down on a shelf. Abigail examined the canister and found that she couldn't move it. "What's in there?" she asked suspiciously. "Cavorite."
"What?"
William and Abigail asked in unison.
"Where did you get Cavorite?" asked William. "And do you know what the university would do to you if they found out that you have it?"
"It's better that you don't know, and they'll probably make me chancellor."
"Now I know that Cavorite floats on air, but just how is it going to help him?" asked William.
"Here's a little-known fact," said Phineas, leaning back in the chair. "Cavorite, when stimulated by a continuous electric charge, will lose its stability and explode." "How big of an explosion are we talking about?" asked Abigail warily. Phineas picked up a small 1-inch cog. "Say that represents the normal blast radius of a stick of dynamite. Now imagine a cog 20 feet in diameter."
"That should do it," swallowed William. "But where are we going to do this? The house, not to mention the neighborhood, would be leveled, and the neighbors don't like you as it is."
"The Cavorite will take care of that, and the heart will do the rest. This mechanism will run off of the gears in the heart. It generates an electrical charge which will be fed directly to the Cavorite, which in turn will be inside the heart. Steamotep will float into the air to a safe distance, and then explode, destroying the heart and him in one fell swoop." "And you're sure that this will work?" asked Abigail. "Positive. The alternative is facing Mrs. Popkiss's wrath for destroying her garden." "She is a formidable woman," stated Steamotep.
"You don't know the half of it,"
added William. Phineas finished his work and looked up. "Let's get ready," he said. "William, I shall need your help attaching the Cavorite. As soon as I turn the jar over, grab the metal before it goes through the ceiling." Phineas released the clamps holding the jar to the shelf, and William cupped his hands over the opening. His hands shot straight up, and his feet began to lift from the floor. Abigail ran over and pulled him down.
"This is fun,"
William said as Abigail pulled his hands down to the work table. Phineas attached the leads to the metal, then guided everyone to Steamotep, who waited with an amused, yet curious look on his face. The door to the lab opened, and Mrs. Popkiss entered, wearing a helmet with goggles and holding a large rifle. "Company's arriving, sir. They're just about a half-mile south." "Very well, Mrs. Popkiss. We're almost ready here," said Phineas. As Mrs. Popkiss returned to her post outside, they heard her say, "If they land on my hibiscus, there will be war." "Is that another vomit gun?" asked Abigail. "No, that one turns geese orange," replied Phineas nonchalantly. "Abigail, I need you to hold Steamotep down while I place this in his heart.
William, you too, as soon as you let go.
Abigail placed her hands on the mummy's shoulders, and she turned a slight shade of green as parts of him flaked off. Phineas inserted the cavorite, and connected the gear mechanism to the heart Ra. "Are you ready?" he asked Imhotep. "I have been ready for over 3,000 years. Accept my gratitude, and know that my journey ends well. I have been shunned for so long, it brings me peace to be with those who can understand my plight." "I wish we had more time. I think that you enjoy the 19th century." "Every saga must end. Yours is just beginning. Be sure that your story ends better than mine. Know what is truly important in life, and cherish it." To emphasize his point, Steamotep's good eye flicked quickly towards Abigail. "Abigail, open the skylight," Phineas said softly. As the portal opened, Phineas activated the gear setting, and a small electrical arc began bombarding the cavorite. Steamotep looked up as Phineas and William let go of him. The ancient engineer floated gracefully, as if lifted by the gods themselves. When he had cleared the roof, they heard a panicked voice shouting, "Help! I am flying away!"
"Sweep you?"
asked William.
"Great, we forgot about him. Well, there goes $100 out the window, or skylight," replied Phineas. "Sir, we are approaching the destination," stated the captain of the Imperial airship Zephyr. "Ready the men for deployment as soon as we are over the target," answered Lieutenant Farrington Thorne. "Everything is to be seized." Thorne stopped mid-sentence as something flashed past the cabin window. "Did you see?" "It looked to me like a flying mummy, sir," stated the pilot. "I think it waved as it went by," added the captain. Everyone in the cabin moved to the window and looked up. A few seconds later, a brilliant light lit up the sky, temporarily turning night to day. Another few seconds passed before a thunderclap crossed the area, and a shockwave rippled the outer canvas envelope of the airship. Elsewhere, over the exposition, fireworks had begun going off, celebrating the end of the first weekend. Spectators talked about the display for years afterwards as one of the best. Phineas stared up through the skylight as the airship suddenly turned and moved off. "Tell Mrs. Popkiss that she can stand down from general quarters. Oh, and have her bring the brandy and 4 glasses to the study. I think we can take it easy for the rest of the night."
You're listening to Big World Network.